Okay, so hello there, Internet Void. My name is Mage, and this is Black and White Thinking, a place where I put all my nerdy thoughts, because I have many, and we all need a hobby in these trying times. Okay, so, I'm a big fan of the Witcher books by andrzej Sapkowski, and I also recently, and by recently I say 3 months ago, enjoyed the adaptation on Netflix.
First time I've seen The Witcher up close.
However, whilst perusing the never-ending cosmic horror that is Reddit, I noticed a kind of trend in people discussing whether or not book fans had overall enjoyed the show. Whilst it seemed to me personally that most book fans did, a lot of the people online who claim to be book fans seem to take umbrage with a lot of the Netflix adaptation, and I kind of just thought this was strange.
Are you perhaps short of a marble?
I know there are a lot of places online where loud people with loud voices will control the narrative, and a lot of those people have kind of perpetuated this idea that people who enjoyed The Witcher source material didn't like the show. But as someone who's read the Witcher books and is a huge fan of them, I kind of wanted to counteract some of that noise and talk about some of the things I thought were great about Lauren Schmidt's interpretation and understanding of the continent. I mean, as far as Witcher adaptations go, Netflix's version is the most superior by far. Right? So as someone on the internet with opinions who has read the Witcher books, here are a few things I enjoyed about Netflix's adaptation.
Dracarys.
Okay, so I think it'd probably be safe to start with the casting, which was definitely one of the most controversial issues I feel like people had with this adaptation. Now, back in 2018, I want to say, when the main character casting for the Witcher show was announced, I was sceptical. Maybe not sceptical in the way other people were sceptical. I was mostly sceptical about Henry Cavill. He felt like a strange choice to me. A bit bulky, a bit young, and having just watched him play Clark Kent incredibly for the last 5 years, I just had trouble imagining him as Geralt. My second biggest issue with the casting was probably Anya Chalotra's age, especially in relation to Freya Allan. The ability to hold yourself as a woman of 70 at the age of 23 is no easy feat, especially being that Yennefer in the books has this kind of withered by time maturity and all bitterness to her character, even though she looks young.
I've never been shy a day in my life.
However, I'm so happy to be able to eat my words on both points. The casting worked out really well, in my opinion. Henry brought this kind of Margot Robbie playing Harley Quinn or Gerald Butler playing the Phantom vibe, giving a performance where you can tell that he absolutely adores and understands the source material, and that he fully appreciates the opportunity he's been given to play Geralt. He worked his tight ass off in order for people to take him seriously in this role, and it truly shows in his embodiment of Geralt. In the case of Anya, I bow at her altar. Her entire performance blew me away, and she was completely able to hold herself, both as a younger, more vulnerable Yennefer, to the jaded babe we meet later on. Anya carries some of the most emotional moments of the entire show, such as the scene with the baby on the beach, and the Battle of Sodden Hill in the finale. I'm super excited to see what she can do with some of my favourite Yennefer content to come. Yen and Ciri have by far my favourite narratives in the books, so I'm super excited to see what both actresses can do with that. It also feels prevalent to note, as anyone watching this will know, there were other controversies surrounding the casting. A lot of them to do with whether or not brown and black people are allowed to exist in the continent. I'm just going to flat out say, anyone that has an issue with such casting is a racist. Next point. Timeline and structure. As much as I enjoy the Witcher books, anyone who has read them can definitely attest to the fact that they are often a little structurally challenging, maybe even a bit messy sometimes. It's one of the reasons I think the books are great, the fact that they take risks, but it is also one of the reasons I found it so ironic that the Netflix adaptation's 3 timeline structure seemed to piss so many people off. I thought the writers did well to lay out the 3 separate timelines of Yennefer, Ciri and Geralt, leaving subtle clues along the way for the audience to uncover. I mean, things like Westworld are currently on TV. The Witcher by no means held the audience's hand in regards to the timeline, but at no point did I ever think it was confusing. Quite the opposite. As I said before, Sapko's books are erratic in their structure and chronology, with flashbacks and meta inserted pretty much wherever the hell Sapko feels like. As a book reader, the structure of the television adaptation was not necessarily better, but it felt much easier to understand overall, I believe. Point 3. Stupid sexism. Now, I'm sure this won't be a controversial opinion on the internet, but the Witcher books can be sexist. A lot of it is kind of self-insert fuckboy stuff, but it still exists within the story. And some of it is not fuckboy stuff. This is not to say the female characters in The Witcher are not incredible. Yennefer and Ciri are still some of the greatest ladies I've ever had the pleasure of reading. especially within this particularly lackluster fantasy genre. In fact, the strength of Sapko's women can often blind his readers to his more lucidious takes of the women of The Witcher. I think the show managed to rid the story of some of the more unnecessarily pervy moments, like the bought orgy, for example, or Yennefer being tied to the cart by the Reavers, or how the Witcher books literally open with Geralt fucking Iola. And the show managed to do this without sedating anyone's sexuality, or ignoring the fact that the continent is a god-awful patriarchy where women have to fight harder than men for half the recognition and twice the rape threats.
And let's face it, you're a girl.
I do not think gender and sexuality can be ignored when adapting The Witcher, as those ideas are tied to the narrative and development of almost every character. Another adaptational play around in regards to women I enjoyed was how well Renfrey's story was weaved throughout the rest of the series. I've always kind of had some issues with the Lesser Evil, and not necessarily because I think the story itself is sexist, but because so many people read it and think the whole evil is evil quote is deep and meaningful and they misinterpret it. Geralt is the bad guy in that story. He is at his lowest. As Ciri later states in the series, only for Geralt to realise she was right, neutrality is evil. And by killing Renfrey, and not Stregobor, Geralt made a choice, no matter how hard he convinces himself otherwise. And I personally think he made the wrong one.
You made a choice.
I have discussed this story with other women to no end, and I usually find they either love it or they hate it. I'm just glad in the adaptation, Renfrey's death did not come off as a minor inconvenience in Geralt's life.
The girl in the was with you always.
Having the Striga contract take place after Blaviken changes the context of both stories, but it allows for a sense of relatability to exist within Cavill's Geralt, one I find Geralt often lacks in the books personally, especially in regards to how he acts around women. Essentially, all of the women were great. Fringilla, Tisea, Calanthe, Pivetta. I mean, I wish we had Yennefer, but I'm not going to complain. Point 4. Intros and non-intros.
You don't have much time.
Who the fuck are you?
One of the things I enjoyed most about this particular adaptation is the fact I think it took a lot of creative risk, much like the books, without falling into the whole defy their expectations crap trap other shows have fallen into recently. And one of the ways I think this was most notable was in the character introductions. The how, when and why of certain people's appearances, and even the choice to leave some characters out. As much as I would have loved to see Yennefer, I understand why she wasn't there. Being that she doesn't feature in any of the short stories herself, but rather the connecting chapters, it would have been confusing. Not cutting Vicenna was a good idea. I think her presence as a ghost, metaphorically, in Geralt's life explains so many of his relationships, especially with women, especially with sorceresses. Geralt's got mummy issues. I also love how the rest of the lodge was introduced, slowly, and we still have so many of them to look forward to. The introductions of villains, such as Fringilla, who I wouldn't necessarily call a villain entirely, and Vilgefortz, so early in the plot, and with such weight, was fascinating. Having them both interacting at this point in the story with Yennefer the way they were was both terrifying and glorious to watch as a book reader, knowing what is to come. I also enjoyed the non-introduction of other villains, and the villainish, such as simply referring to Ymir as the White Flame, the vague saviour of Nilfgaard. It's so good, and it is going to be so much fun watching other people work out his importance as the show goes on. It was also, I believe, a good choice not to introduce Philippa, and by extension, Dijkstra, into the story at this point. Philippa is the absolute best, but she also takes up a lot of space, and her ability to control the lodge comes in the vacuum of Tisea's absence. Leaving space to explore her full potential later on in the story was definitely the right decision. I think it's also important to acknowledge, though, as someone that enjoys writing, that a lot of these decisions seem kind of risky, not just in terms of how the audience would potentially receive adaptational changes, but also in regards to renewal. The writers of the show could have easily gone at the first season as if it were a mini-series, wrapping everything up to avoid any unnecessary audience confusion if the show is cancelled. They didn't, however. They were happy to introduce characters who don't really begin playing a huge role until the later books, but who the audience will benefit from seeing early on in the story. That in itself was a risk I enjoyed. The plotting of the much larger arc of these books. Point 5. Yennefer of Vengerberg. Now, I love the Witcher series as a whole. There are probably hundreds of tiny aspects in the books that I adore. However, upon reading those books for the first time, I fell for Yennefer of Vengerberg hard. She is by far one of my favourite characters in all of literature, and in my opinion, one of the best 3 women in the entirety of popular fantasy. And as Yennefer's biggest fan, second only to Geralt of Rivia himself, I absolutely adored the way she was portrayed on screen in this adaptation. I loved the fleshing out of her childhood, her relationship to Tisea, her relationship with herself and her wants and her needs.
What more do you want? Everything.
As anyone who has been around in the online Witcher circles for the last few years will know, Yennefer's character has often taken a beating from people who have misinterpreted her, or been purposely misinformed about her character via mediums other than the books. Then there are certain adaptations of Yennefer that seem to completely ignore any essence of her personality, and portray her simply as a bitter stain on Geralt's life. To finally see Yennefer be adapted confidently by writers willing to understand not only her bold character, but her deep emotional nuance, to see her adapted in a way that finally shows that she is not some simple cutout of a character, or a woman, but a bold and fierce hero in this story, to see her adapted by people willing to finally pay her dues after the year we've had in fantasy television, was a gift. And my final point, while we are discussing Yennefer, and how it was made clear that the writers do respect her, my absolute favourite moment in the entire first season of The Witcher was the last exchange between Geralt and Ciri.
Who is Yennefer?
Yennefer and Ciri's relationship is the heart of this story in my opinion, and the line, "Who's Yennefer?" made me more excited than anything to see the story of this family play out in the hands of Lauren Hissrich.
I feel something out there waits for you. Something more.
Toss a coin to your Witcher, oh valley of plenty, oh valley of plenty, oh. Toss a coin to your Witcher, oh valley of plenty.
Wait, I never mentioned Jaskier. Why did I never mention Jaskier? Jaskier was great, no complaints. Hardcore bisexual twink energy, that was all I needed. Thanks.
At the edge of the world, fight the mighty horn that bashes and breaks you and brings you to more. He thrust every elf far back on the shelf, high up on the mountain from whence it came. He wiped out your pest, God kicked in his chest. He's a friend of humanity, so give him the rest. That's my epic tale. Our champion prevailed, defeated the villain. Now pour him some ale. Toss a coin to your Witcher, oh valley of plenty.